you very much, Yang, for the introduction. I'm sorry not to be able to join you all for this particular meeting. Met a lot of you about 6 months ago in San Francisco, and perhaps we'll do so again when you have the meeting back up here. But I'm glad to be able to talk to you all about CIRM and give you some more details about our funding mechanisms that you may be interested in. As Yang mentioned, we are the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, the state stem cell agency, and we were founded to fund research and development of regenerative medicine therapies, including cell and now gene therapies as well. In my job at CIRM, I'm a program officer, and I manage a portfolio of projects that have received funding from us, mainly in the translational through the clinical trial stages. So I'll tell you about our funding opportunities today, and then I encourage you to contact me later if you have more questions. Be more than happy to have some follow-up calls. See if I can get the slides. Yeah, so the mission of CIRM is accelerating world-class science to deliver transformative regenerative medicine treatments in an equitable manner to a diverse California and world. And I think that captures two guiding principles behind everything we fund, which is, first of all, the importance of first-class science, but equally important is the importance of equity at all phases of development, from the research all the way through clinical trials, and then we hope eventually when these therapies are marketed. So I'll just give you a little background on CIRM here. We were created in 2004 by the passage of Prop 71. And at that time, Californians voted to invest $3 billion to support stem cell research in California. And over the course of the next 16 years, CIRM made major investments in early stage research and therapy development, and as well as established a lot of the necessary infrastructure for this work. So buildings and shared labs and an alpha clinics network for delivering these advanced therapies. And, you know, a lot of momentum was gained over the course of those 16 years. There was a lot of advances in science during that time, including, you know, the discovery of induced pluripotent stem cells and CRISPR gene editing. And by the time we used up that first $3 billion in 2020, CIRM had already funded over 50 different clinical trials, which was really a huge advance from where we started with pretty basic research 16 years earlier. So in 2020, California voters decided to maintain our agency through a second ballot initiative, which was Prop 14, which renewed the agency with $5.5 billion in funding. So at that time, also CIRM expanded beyond just stem cell-based therapies to include genetic therapies, by which we have a pretty broad definition that includes gene editing, gene replacement, oligonucleotides, and RNA-based technologies, basically anything that might affect the nucleic acids of the cell. CIRM is a unique funder, we think, that we truly consider ourselves to be partners with those that we fund. You know, we have the California taxpayers' investment in mind, and we want it to be successful. So we bring to bear our own internal expertise, as well as that of external consultants, to help teams overcome challenges along the way after they've been funded by us. And as I mentioned, we have in place various pieces of infrastructure like shared labs and the Alpha Clinics network. And then finally, we do place a very strong emphasis on the importance of equity at all stages of the research and clinical trials process, and ultimately for access to these new types of therapies. And so we are actually implementing requirements for those that we fund to ensure that diverse populations will be able to participate in the research, have their voices heard during the design of clinical trials, and then ultimately benefit from any therapies that are approved. So we have what we call 5 different funding pillars. And 2 of these pillars are the education pillar and the infrastructure pillars. And we actually do have very extensive educational training programs from all the way from high school to postgraduate. And these are extremely well-received programs and have really launched the career trajectories of a lot of young people in California. But today I want to focus mainly on our core discovery, translation, and clinical program announcements, which basically correspond to the various phases of therapeutic development. And they are pretty much defined by some key scientific and regulatory milestones that typically occur during therapeutic development. So I will spend some time describing those in detail in a moment. I first want to just give you a feeling for how diverse the CIRM funding pipeline is in terms of the types of indications that we fund. So we do have a fairly strong emphasis in neuroscience as well as cancer. That has not been by direction. That's the nature of the applications that we've received over time. And then in blood diseases, a lot of these are single genetic mutations in the blood lineages that can be corrected by gene therapy and hematopoietic stem cell transplant. But you see, we also have funded in the areas of kidney and heart disease, quite a few in eye diseases and diabetes. And of interest to you, this group is the musculoskeletal, which has been not as prominent to date, but we certainly are interested in it. I also want to mention on this slide that as of this date, we have now funded 96 different clinical trials in all these different areas. So we've really got our hands in a lot of work here. And we're also pretty proud to say that many of the projects that we fund at the later stages were those that actually started in the CIRM pipeline at some of these earlier stages. So we're always happy to see one of our internal programs advance. Okay, so onto these core funding opportunities. Again, it's a pipeline starting with discovery. And these balls just show you for this fiscal year, the funding allocation for these different stages. In the discovery stage, there's actually 3 different program announcements relevant to discovery. However, only one of those, the DISC-2 program, is really aimed at therapeutic development or device development. And that's, so the DISC-2, I'll focus on that. The other 2 discovery programs are more on basic research. DISC-0 is for understanding fundamental mechanisms of stem cell biology, and DISC-4 is primarily aimed at fundamental mechanisms of psychiatric disease. So then we have the translational program. When a project has completed a discovery phase award, the outcome should be a single product candidate, which then would be eligible for the translational stage award. And then the outcome of the translational stage award is pre-IND meeting or equivalent, which then is the entry point for our CLIN-1 award for IND enabling studies, and then ultimately our CLIN-2 awards for the clinical trial stage awards. So just to give a little more detail, so Discovery 2 awards actually have 4 different tracks. There's the therapeutic track, diagnostic track, medical devices or tools. And the goal of any of those is just to discover a technology and that's stem cell based or genetic therapy based that results in the selection of a candidate that's ready for the translational stage. And when I say that it's ready for a therapeutic, what we look for is that at the end of the Discovery Award, the team has shown reproducible disease-modifying activity with the therapeutic candidate, as opposed to a surrogate candidate, for example. It has to be the intended candidate. And this slide is here to show you some of the funding details. There's a little bit more funding allowed for a therapeutic candidate than for the other tracks. We don't get nearly as many applications in the diagnostic device or tool categories. However, we do get some, and I imagine some of you may be working, for example, on a device. So that's important to note. And you can see these funding amounts. The time limit for a therapeutic discovery award is 3 years, and for the remainder of these categories, it's a 2-year award. I do want to say that these discovery phase stage awards are only eligible to applicants who are California-based organizations. I know this group is a collaboration between both California and outside California groups, so I wanted to make that point. Then we have the translational awards. Again, these correspond to 4 different tracks: therapeutic, diagnostic, device, and tool. And here, the outcome is a pre-IND meeting in the case of a therapeutic, or a pre-submission meeting in the case of a diagnostic or a medical device. And for therapeutic, for example, the types of activities that we would expect would include establishing a GMP compatible and scalable process, further development of analytical methods, defining preliminary tox studies and biodistribution, and establishing a route of administration, and also developing a clinical protocol. And typically, those are the types of information that go into a pre-IND briefing document to have you have a well-prepared meeting with the FDA. And again, the translational stage awards are limited to California-based organizations. And we do define a California organization in a very simple way, which is that greater than 50% of the employees of the organization work and pay taxes in California. That's our metric. So here's the slide that gives you some of the funding details on the trans stage awards. The funding limit for Tran 1 is $4 million for a stem cell or a gene therapy approach, or $2 million for the biologic or small molecule, or sorry, I think that's the $2 million is only for the small molecule, $4 million for the other categories of stem cell, gene therapy, or biologic. And so a stem cell or a biologic or a small molecule is only eligible if you can demonstrate that it acts on an endogenous stem cell as part of the mechanism of action. These awards are 2.5 years long. And for a for-profit entity, we do ask for 20% co-funding for these translational stage awards. The next stage is the IND enabling stage awards, which we call CLIN 1. Sorry, I forgot to mention to you, and point out for the Discovery Awards, the Disc 2 is only offered once a year. The next deadline is May 2024. The Tran Stage Awards are offered twice a year. There's a deadline today, and then 2 deadlines in 2024 in June and December of 2024. Now, the CLIN Stage Awards are different. First of all, both CLIN 1 and CLIN 2 awards are offered monthly. We have application deadlines at the last business day of every month. In addition, both California and non-California organizations may apply. There are some differences in what costs are allowable for a non-California organization, in that for a non-California organization, allowable costs must be for activities that take place in California. In contrast, a California organization may apply for activities that take place in California or outside California, although we do encourage that they do as much work as possible within the state. So CLIN 1 awards are for completing IND enabling studies such as GLP tox studies, GMP manufacturing, both for the preclinical tox studies and for the clinical trial, and then IND filing. And once the IND is filed, we do allow you 6 months extra for clinical trial startup activities that you may want to take care of while in parallel applying for one of our CLIN 2 awards, which is to fund the trial itself. Again, I mentioned the importance of equity, and applicants are asked to describe their activities to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. We ask you to really start thinking about the clinical trial at this CLIN 1 stage and start laying the groundwork for your outreach activities to ensure a diverse population in the clinical trial. So for CLIN 1, sorry, I didn't get to the funding slide yet. So CLIN 2, the activities here are the activities necessary to complete a single clinical trial, and we include in that any correlative studies you may be doing, manufacturing of the product, if you haven't made enough in the before the start of the trial, or if it's an autologous product, for example, manufacturing would be allowable costs, comparability studies, and we also encourage activities to uphold the DEI principles, and outreach for the clinical trial. We also encourage sharing of clinical data when appropriate. We want you to share it, but only at a time when you have been able to file any IP, for example, or do publications. So here are the funding amounts for both CLIN 1 and CLIN 2. It's different for a nonprofit and a for-profit. CLIN 1, a nonprofit, the funding limit is $6 million. I should put an asterisk here. This amount is likely to go up by about 20% pending a board approval. That's been a proposal. And the for-profit is currently $4 million. It may go up by about 20%. The nonprofits for CLIN 2 have a funding cap of $12 million for a first-in-human trial, or $15 million after first-in-human. And the nonprofits, sorry, I should have said that was for the nonprofits. For the for-profit, it's $8 million and $15 million. Again, we have monthly application deadlines. It's around 3 months between application and funding, if all goes well. And myself and others on my team encourage you to reach out to us if you're applying for a CLIN 1 or CLIN 2 award. We will help you through the fairly detailed application process, including reviewing the proposal before you submit it, before you send it over the wall, as we say, to the review office. We want to help you make sure you get everything put into the proposal in a way that reviewers can appreciate what you've done, and that you don't miss anything that that could have helped your proposal. So we know it's a big investment in time, and so we want you to put your best foot forward, and that's why we help you through that process. The DEI principles are incorporated into all our initiatives. We encourage racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and geographic diversity on research teams and for clinical trial participants. We ask that our teams do cultural sensitivity training, and that they have very active outreach programs for clinical trials. And this is really emphasized by the fact that during review, CLIN 1 and CLIN 2 applications get two different scores. They get a science score and a DEI score, and they must do well on both of those scores in order for the application to be forwarded to the board for funding. So it's a very important thing for us. I just want to briefly mention in my last few minutes some of the resources that we've put in place to facilitate success. So one of that is advisory panels that we set up for our translational CLIN 1 and CLIN 2 awards. And these are small external groups of external advisors, usually a science advisor of some sort, as well as a patient advocate advisor, and then members of the CIRM team, including the lead program officer who's working with the team. And we typically have meetings with these panels once or twice a year to discuss how the progress of the project is going and any challenges. And the idea is for you to be straightforward about, what your concerns and challenges are, so that we can help you be successful. It's a well-received program, and it's quite striking how often the patient advocate advisors can really have an impact on the program. The other resource I just want to mention is our expanding Alpha Clinics network, which is major medical centers from north to south in California. And these are teams that have special expertise in cell and gene therapy, administration and care. They do function as a network. They have a common IRB, and each of these different sites also has particular resources that they make available to each other. So they really function as a network. They can refer patients throughout the network, and they have regular meetings. So it's a way to synergize and really become more impactful for all of our patients. So I think with that, I have just want to leave you with my email address, as well as the CIRM website. I would be glad to answer any of your questions that you may have now, or if you have questions later, I'm also happy to hear from you by email, and we can set up a Zoom call. So I'm going to stop sharing. And there you all are.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
Okay, questions for Lisa.
Okay. Well, if there's no questions,
we have one.
I just have one question. Given that we do have projects here that are all over the country, I'm curious whether there's anything similar to CIRM that you're aware of in other states.
There's nothing really quite like CERM. I think Maryland has a stem cell agency. I'm not sure what the status of it is, not with nearly as much funding. New York had one. I'm also, again, not sure what the status of it is, but I think we're pretty unique. Another question I see.
Yeah, thank you. Along those lines, how many of the projects are funded outside of the state? Or how many of the other ones are led by out-of-staters?
Yeah, well, we talked to quite a few companies, mostly from out of state. So, at the CLIN stage, I would say we have, it's not the majority, but we definitely have a fair number. And usually they take advantage of it by having clinical trial sites in California for the CLIN 2 awards. So basically, if you have patients treated at a California site, we can pay the fully loaded costs for the treatment of that patient. Basically, the simple calculation that we do is if the full cost of the trial is $10 million, and there's 100 patients and 50 of them are treated in California, then $5 million of the would be allowable costs. We just prorate it by the number of patients. And then for the CLIN 1 stage awards, we also do get some, not as many, but we do get some out-of-state applicants who are doing manufacturing in California or their GLP tox studies in California.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, thank you, Lisa, again, really for that wonderful update. Appreciate all the support, and we're looking forward to working with you.
Great, thank you, and have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Take care.